Sinister.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am BorderWise, and welcome back to From the Depths Most Wanted! Now, those of you who have been playing this game and know the ins and outs and what to be afraid of, probably already recognize this thing even though I've spawned it on my team and it's in my fleet colors, but before that, quick little apology and announcement. My computer is a very good one. It can handle a system-heavy game like From the Depths. It can handle system-heavy recording software like Bandicam, that's what I use. And it can handle hot humid weather. It turns out it cannot handle all three things at the same time when doing a campaign episode when there's a lot of stuff going on. So, unfortunately, the campaign playthrough is going to have to wait a little bit until the weather cools down. Which is a bit of a problem. It shouldn't be too long, it should be maybe a week, 2 weeks, a month. Which is a pain in the arse, and I am not happy about it at all because I'm enjoying that campaign. I want to move on with it, but that is how it is. And so for the next while, it's going to be other things. It's going to be tutorials. It's going to be Most Wanted. It's going to be subscriber review stuff, which is actually perfectly fine because those are fun to do, and like you guys seem to like them as well. But anyway, on to the point of the video. This is the Perforator, and this is one of the primary reasons that people are so scared of the white flares, myself included, because this thing is absolutely terrifying. It is a very, very formidable ship, and even once you've, like, made craft that can deal with it, it's still a pain in the butt. So, first off, why is this thing so dangerous? Well, to start off with, first on the list is, well, it's the basic thing again, really. It deals a lot of damage and it takes a lot of damage, but more specifically, this thing is incredibly well shielded. And so the best way to demonstrate that is to change the shield color, turn all that off, and then I am going to spawn in a very unlucky marauder. Yeah. So this thing has a huge amount of shield coverage. There's not many gaps in it at all. There's a gap here, that's really unusual, but on the side, so this thing takes an awful lot of advanced cannon fire in order to defeat. It's like, on the sides here, like at the bulge line, where the bulge armor is, this thing is, it's just stupid amounts of shields. So that is 4 shields arranged in a way that's 1, 2, 3... Oh god. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 layers deep. And these shields are, as I called, not the strongest in the world. But they are still pretty strong. If you go here, they're strength 2. These ones on the side here. So, they're not feeble, and the fact they overlap like that means that this thing is almost completely immune to kinetic rounds and fragmentation rounds. And it's just any other kind of advanced cannon round, except for a specific type, which I'll talk about later, is going to have a really hard time damaging this thing. Okay, so thank you, Marauder. You can go away now. So, it's got very good shielding. It's also decently armored. This bulge you see here is quite thick. So here, right below the waterline, so down here when there's vulnerable components and the main turret, little aim point distractions right here, you have a layer of heavy armor and a layer of metal. So that is quite tough. It's easy enough to peel off the layer of metal. Heavy armor behind it, not so much. So anything with aim point selection is usually going to get distracted shooting down here, which is well armored and has that ridiculous shield barrier sticking out from it. So, and then, just continue on with the defense, it has a lot of shields, as we mentioned. It's got good armor on the bulge. It's got a lot of smoke, so I'll just show you that again. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, around here. Again, it's around the bulge, the bit where the creator of the ship obviously wants people to shoot at. You have a stupid amount of smoke, so laser-armed craft with aim point selection tend to have a really hard time with this thing, unless they can get at an angle where they shoot past the smoke. But yeah, there's a lot of smoke there. Is there more smoke? Yeah, there's smoke around the AI in quite a cunning way, actually. I never thought of doing that. Actually, I have. Never mind. I tell a lie. But yeah, so it has a lot of smoke. Lasers aren't really going to cut it. And it has a lot of missile decoys. So you see here on the back, you have regulators, sonar buoys. Those things pop off and they just distract torpedoes for a ridiculously long time. You've got a lot of flares. You've got sticky flares that just fire straight up in the air, catch IR missiles, and pull them off into the upper atmosphere. And you have a lot of radar decoys. So these things actually are quite cunning because they fly directly at an enemy. And, well, they actually drag enemy missiles behind them. So this thing actually can damage enemy craft with their own missiles, which is quite cunning, actually. Doesn't always work, like, perfectly, but when it does, it's just like, oh, damn you, Perforator. And here, like, here's more countermeasures. It's just a thing covered in sticky flares. Yeah. So, yeah, this thing is not easy to kill. Like, well-armored, well-shielded, lots of missile defense. So, and then we get to the offense. Oh no, the one last thing I should mention is... Let's turn this thing back on, and let's spawn in something reasonably tough that can take a bit of punishment. Let's spawn in a Kingstead. And you should see this thing do this sideways wiggle that makes it so irritating. So yeah, I'm going to talk about the armament in a second, but what you should be seeing right now is the fact that this thing drifts. This thing kind of moves from side to side in a way that actually makes it quite hard to hit with cram cannons and things like that, because the thing just moves its arse from side to side. And that poor Kingstead is having a really bad day. But the reason it's having a really bad day is because of what this thing is armed with, which, let's face it, is the main attraction. So first up, I remember the good old days when it was just a giant frag cannon in the middle here. Alas, those good days are long past, because what you have instead is a 12-armed piercing particle cannon. So these are the stats for it. It's got a bit more vertical focus, not particularly long range or accurate long range, wide field of fire, quite efficient, damage and accuracy. I think it's going more towards damage, and halfway's charge time. It could go to 10, but I guess they want rate of fire for this. So that particle cannon is a pain in the arsehole, and I've actually talked about it on the From the Depths forum. Actually, I think a lot of people were unpleasantly surprised. Like after which I can't remember which update it was. I think it was update 2.00 that the devs decided that the Perforator wasn't scary enough already, and they decided to give it, energy weapons. Because goodness knows, like, overlapping shields were the only way we were ever going to survive the white flares. So, it's got that stupidly ridiculous gun, and you might have seen how blocks poured off the Kingstead once this thing opened fire, and shields are no defense against that thing. But that's not its only party trick. It has two of these frag turrets right here, and these are... What is it? Okay, let me turn the UI back on. So this is 225 millimeters, like 225 millimeters times 2 fragmentation guns. Really dangerous against anything that isn't well shielded or is a reasonably soft target. So if you're, like, unlucky or kind of stupid and you run into the white flares just when you've still got a lot of wooden ships, this is really going to ruin your day. And in fact, even against well-armored targets, like the Kingstead, it kind of just strips blocks off something amazing. Not an incredibly high rate of fire, it's 100 shots per minute, but conveniently I can demonstrate. So you see, it fires like this. So not a blistering rate of fire, but easily quick enough to potentially catch fast targets and to really lay on the frag, which is very, very irritating. And to finish off the guns, it's got two of these little 80mm sabot guns, just on the front and on the back, or on the bow and on the stern, I should say. So yeah, these things are not a problem if your craft even have, like, remotely good shielding, but once shields are down, these things really tear through ships, so still quite dangerous. So yeah, that's the guns I believe I've talked about, and the thing also has missiles. It has these rather large IR missiles, and these... what do these go for? What? Interesting, never noticed that before. So these are IR missiles that, like, are designed to take down shields, it looks like. Which, like, makes sense because, like, it means that the frag guns can do their work even better. And here you have active radar missiles, which I guess are just more general purpose. Lots of these things set to 180 degrees. Not the most efficient missile setup, but quite frankly, I'm not complaining. This thing is scary enough as it is. And so there's got guns, it's got missiles, it's got that stupidly powerful particle cannon, and it also has torpedoes. It has about 28 torpedo tubes. So towards the stern, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 16. And then here it has another 12 on the front, on either side. So it's about 28 torpedo tubes in total. These are... yeah, these are pretty bog-standard explosive torpedoes. Not particularly maneuverable, only got 2 fins on the back, but they are fast, and they do have target prediction. A lot of warheads. And basically this thing... basically, if it's in the water or on it, this thing is going to give it a really bad day. Possibly its final bad day. So, how do you deal with this thing? Is the question, like, we're all begging to know. Goodness knows I've asked that question in despair in, like, my earlier days of From the Depths when I ran into this thing. So, how do you deal with it? What are its weaknesses, in other words? Well, first up, unlike a lot of White Flare ships, like, White Flare ships tend to go for, like, 2 variants. There's these gun craft, which are, like, you have lots of sabot guns, lots of frag guns, in this case, a particle cannon, and just sharp objects to fling at the enemy. And they tend to have this kind of forward and back symmetrical design, which I quite like. A lot of my ships are designed along the same way. But their fast craft are the ramming craft, and these ones aren't quite as speedy. So you can see top speed caps out at about... is it going to go up to it again? About 17 meters per second. So it's not slow, but it's not incredibly fast either. It's also quite big, and that comes important later. And another weakness, as I mentioned before, this thing has decent bulge armor. Yes, it does. It does have decent bulge armor. It's got a layer, metal, layer of heavy armor. That does the job for the most part. That is pretty much the only place it's really well armored, because if you have a look here, the deck armor is quite thin. It's just one layer of metal, even around... oh, hello. Not around here, though. Around this bit and around the engines, it's a layer of alloy and a layer of metal around the superstructure. But around the gun here, yeah, it's one layer of alloy, one layer of metal. That's not bad, but it's not amazing either. So this thing is vulnerable to plunging fire a little bit. So where we are. Okay, we have the big turret in the middle. That has more substantial deck armor. It's got heavy armor and metal. But the weakness of this thing is here. It is the superstructure bulge. So up here, there is considerably less armor. So, here. Right here, it's one layer of metal. This little gap between the armor bulge here and the beginning of the superstructure right here, this is just one layer of metal. And that is a... like, I don't want to say fatal weakness, but it is definitely weakness. And then there's just empty space, one layer of metal, and then there's the main turret. So, if you can get past the shields, and remember, there's actually a gap in the shields. I think it's near the front, it's around here. If you can get through that, and in here, the main gun can be disabled. It's not easy because of the aforementioned shields, but it can happen. I have seen it happen in more than one test. And speaking of shields, because of these kind of structural weaknesses, you just have these kind of pockets where it's just a layer of metal, layer of alloy. This thing is vulnerable once its shields are down. You see, but down here, around these sabot guns, it's just one layer of metal. One layer of metal here, alloy being just under it. Let's see here. Yeah, just one layer here. So these little secondary turrets are quite vulnerable to any shots coming from just at an angle. So either from straight down or from 45 degrees. And yeah, so once you can get past the shields by using my shield bypassing weaponry, this thing is actually kind of vulnerable. Not super vulnerable, it's still mostly made of metal, it's still tough, but it can be killed. So, what kind of things do you use to get past shields? Well, for one thing, you use beam riding missiles. So this thing has too much smoke for just standard laser guided missiles to be effective, but beam riders do work. And I would spawn in one of my submarines to show you, but unfortunately this thing does kill submarines fairly easily with this friggin' particle cannon. So just take my word for it, anything with like beam rider missiles or torpedoes should be able to damage this thing consistently, because the countermeasures won't work, the shields won't do anything, and if they get in here, they'll be able to just, like, essentially pop this main turret, which is the main source of this thing's firepower. Once this is down, it is considerably less dangerous. And another thing in a twist of irony that can get through this is use particle cannons yourself. Especially piercing, because this armor here, you see it's about 1-2 layer of metal, soft stuff, 1 layer of alloy, soft stuff, and then straight onto the main turret. A decent particle cannon will tear straight through a desecrator, which is delicious irony considering that that's what its particle cannon is specifically designed to do. I am rubbish with particle cannons, so I'm not going to demonstrate that. But speaking of particle cannons, you will notice again how this thing is specialized. So, damage and attenuation. So, this thing is primed more towards damage than accuracy, and same down here, it's slightly more damage and accuracy, so I can show you that by doing this. That is not what I wanted to do. I want to do that again. I want to aim right there. So, it actually is pretty good when aiming level, but around here, so about 1,300 meters out, oh no, more than that, get to about... Yeah, you don't realize how much this spreads until you can... Yeah, so this thing loses accuracy a lot. Oh, wow, that's pretty. That is so pretty. I wish I'd done that sooner. It's around... Here is where it starts really attenuating. So about anything about 1,000 meters out, and anything that is like up, like a little bit elevated or a little bit down a bit, there's a reasonable chance that most of these beams will miss, which is precisely why there's lots of them. This is like a very big energy shotgun. And also, because of that, like often in my testing, I'll set this thing up against another ship, and the first particle cannon shot will miss, and it does that quite reliably. So it's not so much an alpha strike so much as it is first shot and then second shot does damage. So if you can evade that first shot and then just get either directly over it or directly under it, you should be reasonably safe. And I completely forgot to mention that this thing uses a PID system, so it's quite hard to capsize or sink. And it's also covered in RAM, so don't get up close, don't try to give it a hug. Okay. So, like, the particle cannon isn't super accurate, that is a good thing, so my suggestion is stay at range. And the other thing you can do is, because it relies so much on shields for defense, you can use disruption warheads, and I've covered that in the Bulwark, like, most wanted video, but it is even more relevant in this. So here is a perforator, which I have prepared off camera. The only change I've made is that the shields are visible. So there you see, thing has a lot of shields. It looks funky in Deepwater Guard colors, I have to say. It is nicely off, and I will spawn in my disruptor turret demo. And incidentally, keep in mind that the turrets I'm about to show off, they're not the most powerful guns. APS is not my specialty, not even close. So I'm going to load that in. Why did I do that? Why did I do that? I'm gonna have to do that again. Sorry. Brain fart. I'm just making noises now. It's what I do. It's what I do. So now we go over here. We spawn the thing in on my team. Make sure everything is off. Right, so these are 400mm disruptor rounds. Same as what I showed off for the Bulwark. 2 HE warheads, EMP, disruptor, inertial fuse. So, not super powerful. Like, if you really want to see powerful disruption shells, have a look at the Kobold, Grey Talon's airship. That thing's scary as hell. Please ignore the smoke guns, they're here mostly for morale and support. So, way over here you see the Perforator, covered in shields, very scary. And in come disruption warheads. And if you look closely, you will be able to see, there you go, shields being turned off one by one. And that means that those HE warheads can get in and do some juicy damage right there on the hull. And as you can see, already it's breached. And once high explosive rounds get inside the ship, they do a lot of damage, because they can damage blocks all around them. See that? The thing is essentially gonna blow a hole straight through it. It does take a while with these guns, though, because, simply because this thing is big. This is a 15,000 blocks. So that is definitely one way to do it. Even scratching this thing is an accomplishment, by the way. So within about, what, 10 seconds, we have opened up a nice big hole. And if you have sabot rounds of your own, this is a nice big hole for them. And the other great thing about disruption rounds is that they damage heavy armor. You can see that they will start tearing through these things eventually. See, that one's already badly damaged. I could watch this all day. Screw you, Perforator. Never liked you anyway. Okay, that's enough. You get the idea. So, Disruption APS, very good against the Perforator. I would show it off in a ship, but I keep meaning to build a ship armed with Disruption shells. I keep failing to get around to it, but that's okay. And to finish off, we will spawn in a Perforator on the White Flayers team for a very specific reason. Because, joy of joys! Way over here. Right, let's turn off the UI. So Perforator in her white flayery glory. And this is not just to get a thumbnail for the video, honest. In fact, let's do this. Just quickly. Yay! New Intel image. So, we have talked about how this thing is average speed, it's very large, and very importantly, it does not have a LAM system. So, what is good against things which do that? The answer might surprise you. This would be more dramatic if I could get over here faster. Okay. Crams are actually a good thing. See that attenuation? Glorious. So if we whistle over here, please ignore the fact that the Naga has a stupidly high repair rate. That is not the idea. Oh goodness, we're way over there now. I'm ruining the moment. So basically, because the Perforator isn't particularly fast and it relies heavily on shields rather than armor, or evasion, I should say, crams are actually a very good weapon to use against it. As you can see right here, shields aren't doing much. They are doing little, but crams are far more likely to get through those shields than APS. Although the little salsa dance that the Perforator does not help, that's for sure. Naga, stop aiming like a weird person. Is the main gun damaged yet? No, it is not. So at the very least, you can see crams can get through, they can do damage. That is the main thing. Because of the way crams arc, they can actually slip through the very few gaps that are present in the shields of this thing. So there you have it. For the record, the Naga will eventually win this thing, it just takes a while. Freakin salsa dance. So anyway, thank you all so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. And I will see you next time in From the Depths Most Wanted. Hope your day isn't like as hot as mine. Farewell!